Hi, this is Pat Iyer with Writing to Get Business, and I have with me today Tina Greenbaum, who I met at a C-suite network event. I believe it was in San Francisco. Was it, Tina?
I do believe it may have been New York, but I think San Francisco. I think.
I think so. And C-suite Network is the podcast host who is hosting this podcast. They're the largest business podcast network in the world and growing rapidly at the rate of 2 new shows a week. Tina and I both are connected through the C-suite, and when I talked with her initially, we were focusing on her expertise in terms of stress management, and she did a podcast for my other podcast, which is Legal Nurse Podcast. We've reconnected and discovered that Tina had written a book, and I believe, Tina, at the time we first met, you were in the process of putting that book together, if not mistaken.
Exactly. Yes.
And here it is. Now it exists. So first of all, tell us, our listeners, what is the focus of your book and how did it evolve?
Okay, so my focus of my book, it's called Mastery Under Pressure. And so I like to look at how anxiety is at one level and stress and peak performance is at the other level. So I think of it as a continuum. And no matter where you are on that continuum, even if you feel like you're performing really, really well, there's always more to learn. There's always more to become fine-tuned. And people talk about being in the flow and how do you get into the flow and when are you in and when are you out. And so over all the years that I've been working, it's fascinated me in terms of skill building. How do we actually build the skills to manage anxiety and then perform at our very best? So that's sort of the background of it. And I started working on my business of this mastery under pressure. So I've worked over the years. I lived in Washington, D.C. I lived in New York City. I live now outside of San Francisco. So I've worked with a lot of high achievers, actors, dancers, performers, financial people, bank presidents, you name it. And what I found was that a lot of times, again, people knew what they were supposed to do, but they had no idea how to do it. And so I'm really a teacher by nature. And so I wanted to teach these skills. So that's sort of the background. And then the other part, I think you asked me, Pat, was how did the book come to be? And so I started working actually with a business coach. And before I created this Mastery Under Pressure, I was teaching tennis players the same skills, and it was called Tennis to the Max. My husband is a tennis coach, and so I did the mental side of tennis, and then he would take people onto the court. And then people would say, well, could you teach this to business people? Could you teach this to this group? Could you teach it to nurses? And so these skills, again, are universal. So I started creating this program and delineating it mostly with business people in mind. And the way that I created the book was I started with actually an online program. And I had a whole series of things that I would bring people, this is pre-COVID, would bring people into a workshop, a small little workshop, and then a 2-day workshop. And then from the 2-day workshop, I sold my online program. But the program yet actually hadn't been developed. So I had clients before I actually had the program. And so what I did was every week I would do another module and I would record the module on my computer on Keynote. I think it was on Keynote. I recorded it and then I sent it to my graphic artist. I'd send him the script and the audio. And then he would create the slides, and then he would send it back to me in a Keynote form, and then I would send them on to the group that had signed up for the course. So every single week for 12 weeks, I created a new module. And when it came time to write the book, I started thinking about, writing a book. I said, well, I actually already have it written. I have the script. And so I took the scripts and I worked with an editor, and she helped me kind of turn the language more into, instead of this module, it was the next chapter. And then I also created the exercises in the book. And then I created also a workbook that goes along with the book that you could buy separately. And so I have this wonderful little package where I could go either way with it. And what I've learned from the online program, the value of the online program is that it's my coaching in between the modules. Otherwise, I don't sell the program, the online program by itself, because then I say, well, you could just buy the book. And then it doesn't kind of lessen the impact of the program, if that makes sense.
What's fascinating is the evolution of this from a live event to an online course to a book to a workbook.
Yes.
That transition is fascinating to me.
Yes. This has actually been 5 years in the making.
Mm-hmm.
Whole process. And having the book as my, people talk a lot about it as a calling card, but I used to dream about having a book. It's like, oh God, and then when the book came out with my name on it, it's like, wow, I have a book. And so it actually, on a psychological level, what it's done for me is it's uplifted my business, me and my business. Because really now what I'm up to is the point of scaling the business and having content and books and videos and messaging and marketing and social media help and blog writing help. Excuse me. I kind of look back on the last 5 years but it's here. It's actually pretty exciting. I must say so. Myself.
And do you ever repurpose the script into blog posts?
Absolutely. So I have a wonderful person who's helping me with my social media, and I get little messages on Facebook or LinkedIn, and that Tina Greenbaum has posted the next posting, and there I see quotes. Beautifully done. He's just doing a beautiful job with my headshot, and everything is in my colors, and here's a great quote, and then video pieces, and then chapters, not really chapters yet, but just chunks of pieces that I've written that are now showing up in all different kinds of interesting ways, and hopefully, that's my end of actually putting it together, but hopefully helpful to people.
Mm-hmm.
that I'm really, from my years of experience, really giving things that make a difference to people, especially at this time.
I would imagine, being in your line of work and focusing on mastering stress, that you're seeing a lot of people who are talking about the effects of stress that we're going through now.
Yes. So what I used to think about my business, and somebody said, I didn't say this, but the way she said it was perfect. When I was talking, she said, I believe in what you do. I think it's really, really important. But in our line of work, in my business, in my corporation, it's not urgent. So it's important, but not urgent. There's a Eisenhower made up a time management thing. And so he calls it important and urgent, important, not urgent, not important and not urgent. And the other one is just get it off the list. And so right now my work is, again, it's not just me, it's the work that I do is important and very urgent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I have seen that schema applied to the work of risk managers in healthcare when they're trying to prioritize what problem are they going to tackle. It could be critical and infrequent, or it could be critical and frequent in terms of an activity.
Yes.
And putting your resources towards the things that are critical in that 4 quadrant becomes most important.
Absolutely. It's a wonderful way to really kind of manage your day. Again, when we're talking about stress management and you look at all the different things that you have to do, and that feeling of overwhelmed is too much, I find that really helpful. It's like, okay, these 3 things are things that I can tackle today. And but the idea of, and I go back to this so many times, Pat, what I see and what I know, and it's just reinforced over and over and over again, is anxiety is the most, I think anxiety and depression, and I forget the statistics, but particularly now off the charts, absolutely off the charts. Anxiety is not that difficult to manage if you know how to do it. And I just haven't seen too many things, you know, that from the way that I learned many, many years ago. I had fabulous, fabulous teachers, but from a body and a mind perspective, and being able to kind of know what to do with your body, know what to do with your mind, that you can actually quiet it down. There's so many different wonderful ways of learning how to manage it, that you can get through these periods, as difficult as they are.
You mean there are other solutions other than chocolate and ice cream?
Oh no, the chocolate ice cream is the best. That's what I grew up on. You're not having a bad day?
Breyers and
Breyers
Haagen-Dazs.
ice cream. I grew up on Breyers ice cream. I'm from Philadelphia. So,
Yes, I know, but to the chagrin of many people, Breyers ice cream contributes to weight gain, which increases the stress. So it's
exactly right.
not
And
always the best solution.
that's exactly. I was going to say, as long as you eat just enough ice cream not to create that that stress response of feeling really crappy for what you've just done. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I found a couple of weeks ago that I had crossed the line from being interested in the news to an obsession with the news. And I had to take my smartphone and take off the Smart News app, which was feeding me headlines all day long,
Yes.
popping up and interrupting me to tell me about the latest headline. And I actually threw out 2 Klondikes that were in my freezer that had been sitting there going, Pat, we're here. Why aren't you here? And I put them in the bottom of my garbage can so I knew I wouldn't touch them. And I haven't bought ice cream since.
Yes.
And with the app off, I have learned to limit myself to news 1 time a day, usually not at the end of the day, which was another thing that I was doing to myself. Oh, it's 10 o'clock. It's time to turn off the computer. Let's see what's going on with the news. That also is not a good stress management tool.
No, and you're absolutely positively correct. But what you were able to do was to actually notice what was happening to you. That's kind of the first level of awareness, of creating that level of awareness. I noticed that when I do the news, this is what's happening to me. I noticed that I was in a really good mood before I turned it on. Now I feel really off. I noticed that I'm not being able to sleep. So once you can sort of name what it is that's causing the stress, well, now we can then go and problem solve, which is what you did. You know, you took the Klondike bars and you put them in the garbage. So, because addictions, food addictions, any kind of addictions, are always about feelings that we don't want to feel. Always about feelings that we don't want to feel. And so if we just kind of divert our attention and we start focusing on the food or the, you know, the drugs or the alcohol or the joint or whatever it is, I don't have to feel that feeling anymore. Well, again, in short doses, sometimes that's a good thing, but other times you're cutting off your ability to know what the problem is. So then you've lost your radar, you've lost your problem solving ability. So I just wanted to comment on that because that's important.
Well, see, there's a little bonus of a tiny bit of therapy mixed in with this podcast too. That is great. An unexpected bonus.
Can't resist.
Well, what advice would you give people, Tina, who are thinking about either writing an online course that may turn into a book or writing a book that may turn into an online course? That marriage of the two media is one that can be quite profitable and rewarding for the authors as well as the people who go through those programs.
So this is one of the things that I've learned. You know, I said I'm doing this particular part of Mastering Under Pressure for the last 5 years. I've also built 5 private practices every time I moved, I had to start over again and start over again. So I understand what it's like to be a sole proprietor and attempting to do as much as I can by myself, because I didn't have the funds to hire all these wonderful people. But what I've also learned is, and this was some of the best, again, had I known this when I was starting, I would have figured it out a little differently. I volunteer at a incubator, a startup incubator. And they used to bring me at the end of the course. Now they bring me in at the beginning, like how to manage all of this, putting it all together. But the fellow who kind of created it said the difference between a sole proprietor and a founder is a founder has a team. Founder has a team. And when I look at what was involved in all those things, of how I've actually been able to do it. So I started out with a wonderful business coach. And yes, I paid him, but I also was smart enough to understand that I was investing in this money. I didn't have the cash. I didn't have it, but I knew that I couldn't move on because I didn't have the knowledge to kind of do what I wanted to do. So I put money on, an interest-free credit card, because I knew I could pay it off in time. I couldn't pay it all at once, but I knew that I could make payments within the 18 months that it would take me to get to the end of the thing. And that's how I kind of foot my first really expensive helper. And I did it several times over, and always being able to stay within my means and not take on anything that I couldn't pay back. So that was one way. The other way I did it is I did a lot of trading. There were people whose services that I wanted and they wanted mine. And yes, I do psychotherapy, but I'm also a very practical coach. And I'm a good problem solver. And I'm good at helping people assess things and kind of look at what may be the next thing. So I had friends, colleagues, who helped me along the way. I have a wonderful quiz that somebody, wanted my services, and another friend wanted something else. And so there are people in your world that can assist you and that you can assist. So I never want to kind of think about, and also giving away some of your time for something that may turn around in some other way. People ask, I did a lot of speaking, and that got me really kind of out there in the community and people getting to know me. And so somebody says, well, do you speak for free? And as Jeffrey Hazlett says, as part of C-Suite, he said, depending on the audience, damn yes, I'll speak for free. And so being creative, listening to other people, being part of networks where other people are kind of going through the same process. Somebody like Pat, who was an amazing, amazing resource, not only for her incredible talent, but who she knows and how to get around this and how to get around that and how to, do the course. Like I sold the course before I made it. So I didn't invest a cent other than my coaching, but I didn't invest anything in getting somebody to make something for me, until I knew that there was an audience for it. So really kind of learning business savvy. And again, this is small business savvy. This is not, a multi-million-dollar corporation where the problems are different, although they're not. They're just scaled down. But a good business runs in certain things, and we need those things. And just like good mental health work, when you're operating personally, things work if you have these pieces in place. So again, Pat, I'm trying to think of all the things that I've done that, it's also networking, getting to know people that know people and that can give you ideas, and coming out of your single focus. Again, here we are at home. I haven't seen very many friends, certainly not my family that lives, distance from me, but I feel connected. I don't feel alone. I have a community, and these are just all little pieces maybe sometimes that we never think of.
I was talking earlier today to a British hypnotherapist and NLP practitioner, and she commented that many people have said they feel more connected to each other through Zoom than they did when they met in person. And it sounds paradoxical. People are more comfortable because they're talking in their own homes and they are opening up to each other more than if they're standing in a crowded room at a networking event.
Exactly. Waiting to get into the next conversation,
Mm-hmm.
or not, or sitting back and, I don't feel comfortable. This isn't my scene. This isn't. So you get a lot of opportunity online. I mean, we have this community of the C-suite network where, my God, my world has opened up 1,000-fold.
Mm-hmm.
All the amazing, amazing people that I connect with and want to connect with me. And I kind of get off one of the calls and I've got like 10 different LinkedIn invitations, and finding the people and using your time really wisely as to who can you help and who can help you. And I get these wonderful reciprocal relationships going, just like Pat invited me here. Hopefully I can help her, and she's certainly helping me. Yeah.
We focused on the fact that you went from the online course to the book. And another piece that we didn't cover, which I think is also so creative, is to give the script and the audio to a person to help create the visuals.
Mm-hmm.
I have always done my own visuals, my own PowerPoint slides. And it takes me probably 3 times longer than it did for you to create that, because I'm off on the internet, I'm looking at images, I'm getting distracted because, I find 3 or 4 other images that I could potentially use in another project. I've got to pick my PowerPoint template. I've got to write the script that goes with each of those images. I've got to make sure that they're fitting well on the screen, they're not over the edges. If I'm using a pre-purchased template, which I did over this weekend, I have to remember to check to make sure that there's no unexpected animation, that things are not flying in and dropping up and down, which I discovered with the one that I used on the weekend, that I had forgotten to go through and remove all those things. It sounds like you very creatively used a graphic artist person to do what he or she did well with your material. And I have not heard of anyone who's approached it like you did. So that piece is creative and a great use of resources.
Well, there's another wonderful thing that I learned from one of my friends, and I've repeated it over and over and over again. And if it's not your genius, it's not your job.
Mm.
Genius, it's not your job. And creating PowerPoints, even though it can be fun, if I had time and whatever. I've never even taken a course on PowerPoint, so it's frustrating because I don't really know the program. So it's not my genius. And I had this wonderful, wonderful graphic artist in the Philippines. And in the beginning, when I wrote the script, I would put in, slide here, slide there. After like the second or the third, he was so psychologically sophisticated and so in tune with what I was writing, I didn't even have to put it. He put the slides in absolutely the most appropriate places.
Mm-hmm.
And that made it even faster because I just didn't even I could just write and then he would fill it in. And his slides, I'm so proud of the program. Not so, from my voice, not so much, but his visuals were just amazing. And and then I could take I've taken those images that he used there and I've used them over and over and over again in other PowerPoint slides. So let's say that I'm speaking to, so my talks have changed somewhat since COVID, but I could add new ones and then bring those over and use the ones that are in my program. And so honestly, on my investment, which was very small, really, to get this thing off the ground, it has paid for itself over and over and over and over and over again. So yes, and now I have somebody else helping me who also helps me write the PowerPoints. Like, he understands my work so much, and then we follow it through, and then he's finding the pictures, and they're funny and they're creative. My brain doesn't go that way.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty straightforward. And he's got this clever little thing with clouds, and I just would never come. It would never come from me. And so it enhances the work that I do. And obviously the time that you're spending, Pat, that's a lot of time. And I know for myself, if 15 minutes I'll put into something, and if I start to get frustrated and I have to start to go to Google and figure out how to do this and call up Apple, and I'm like, no, not valuable, not valuable.
It is amazing how much time goes into creating a program. I just spent Saturday and most of Sunday creating a approximately 45 slide program on how you can write persuasively for your audience. And I had read 3 books. I created a word outline of the 3 main sections that I wanted to cover. I wrote down the author of the book and the page number, and then pieced it together and found the visuals. So I would say it was easily 12, 14 hours of work to create about 45 minutes of a presentation.
So if we took what you did and we took the part that only you could do, how much time would have that taken you?
It probably would have been half that amount of time, I would guess, because I didn't have a script. I didn't write it out in advance. I was creating the visuals while I was processing and integrating the information in the 3 books. So certainly the visuals, if somebody else had done the visuals and I could hand over a script like you did, it would have reduced my time for sure.
Right. And the truth is, I don't know about you, but I enjoy doing that part. I enjoy doing research. I enjoy writing my things, and making sure that they make sense, and that, this thing leads to the next thing. And that's the part that only I can do.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's my training, it's my background, it's me, it's what I'm offering. Somebody else can actually edit it for me, make it, read better or sound better. But that initial creative process, that's the fun part, I think.
It is.
Right?
It is. Yep, absolutely.
Right. So I honestly dream of the time that I can sit down and think about another book. I love the neuroscience. I have CEUs that I have to fulfill, and they take time. I have to be able to sit for 6-7 hours, and do these things and take the tests. But then I come back and I've got so much knowledge that then I put into my next thing that I do.
Mm-hmm.
Part that I enjoy. And so I'm working really hard to get my life, kind of looking like that and doing these things with you, which I love. And how much fun, is this? And so having that kind of frame of thinking of how I use my time, or how we use our time, and if it's not my genius, it's not my job, and also that 80% of our time during the workday, particularly, needs to also be spent on bringing in new business. You're in business, so how can we incorporate the things that we love at the same time that they are, investing time in your business, doing a podcast or being the podcast host, doing something that's enjoyable, and learning and participating, and then giving some of the other stuff to other people. You'll make more money, actually, and you'll enjoy your life a lot more, I think.
I agree. We've covered a wide range of topics here, Tina, mixed in a little bit of therapy to help listeners and viewers of this podcast know that ice cream is not the answer, even though it sounds like it is. We've talked about how Tina went from a workshop to an online course to a script of a book to a graphic artist who could create the slides to then using the book for social media posts, for blog posts, for images with quotes, which is a beautiful repurposing cycle. And it can go on from there. There are other ways that books can be repurposed as well. And we talked about the phrase that I think will stick in my brain for a long time is that if it's not your genius, it's not your job. Look at how you can develop relationships with people either through bartering, which is a wonderful way to manage it, or paying people who have the skills that it would take you 2, 3, 4, 5 times longer to master and then to actually perform. And I know that people who are listening to this are going to want to know, how can they purchase your book and find out more about the services that you offer?
Sure. So I'll pull off one of them so that you could actually see it. It's called Mastery Under Pressure. And right now it's on Amazon. Soon it'll be on my website, but right now it's from Amazon. And I love to offer also, I have a quiz. It's if you go to masteryunderpressure.net, and it will give you a really good idea of where you sit on these peak performance skills. And then to get in touch with me, it's Tina at masteryunderpressure.com.
Thank you, Tina. That was very helpful. You made such great points in how you put together your information. And I didn't mention also the book and the workbook combination, because the workbook is a piece that sometimes people add in as an afterthought, and yet our knowledge of how people learn is that many people learn by learning, processing, integrating, and writing. The act of writing helps solidify the knowledge, and that's what a workbook can do for you.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you being part of this. And thank you. I appreciate that. And for you who has been watching this podcast, be sure to subscribe to our channel. Be sure to subscribe to our show. You'll find the audio podcast on patiyer.com on my website, as well as on the audio platforms. And then the Pat Iyer website on YouTube will give you the visual. You'll be able to see Tina in person with her beautiful red dress and her orchid behind her. And that adds another dimension to the experience of learning about writing to get business. Thanks so much. Hi, this is Pat Iyer with Writing to Get Business. I just finished a podcast with Cindy Needham, who I met through a joint venture organization based in Canada. Cindy is an entrepreneur, a survivor, and turned her experience of her journey into a book and then into a business. Cindy, please tell our listener or our viewer, what is the journey you went through and how did you translate that into an experience that would help other people?
Thank you, Pat. I went through breast cancer as a double mastectomy breast cancer survivor. I know how hard and complex the journey is. And I know that when women are feeling lost and frustrated, what they are looking for is how to make sense of things and be understood. After 2 years of recovery, I decided to listen to the calling in my heart. I wrote a book to help. It's called The Pink Mountain: How to Stay Positive Through Breast Cancer from Diagnosis to Treatment and Beyond. And from that experience, I created a workbook, a website, and coaching programs to help support women throughout this journey, no matter where they are on that pink mountain.
Thank you, Cindy. And I know for you who's listening or watching this on our YouTube channel, Pat Iyer, that you will enjoy hearing Cindy's podcast. You will be inspired. It will give you another way of looking at how people overcome significant challenges. Be sure to catch Cindy Needham's show and keep watching and listening to Writing to Get Business. Thanks.